as a developer, I'm often on the opposite side of the table. One side there's NHAI, one side there's consultants like Mr. Kishore. I never realized he understood my pain so well, because most of the speech he gave today, he spoke about all the problems I am normally facing. So I will just do a quick recap of whatever he said and I will sit down quickly. So it won't take much time. I've tried to break it through the different phases that we go through. At the early stage, in the design phase itself, as a developer, we are frankly agnostic to the design. Our core job is to find the resources and execute the project to the required design. Obviously, with experience, with knowledge, with our own exploration, we are being exposed to new developments in technology, and we would like to implement those and innovate wherever possible. But the most important thing for a developer to succeed is to have clarity on what is the expectation in the project. And I think most of these issues Mr. Kishore touched upon earlier. Today we have varying types of codes and circulars and manuals and all of that running in parallel, where they're all evolving independently without adequate cross-referencing and sort of cohesiveness. So I think, as he mentioned earlier, if there can be a coordinated effort to update these together, like for example 6-laning along with all the attendant requirements of drainage, of signages, of everything going together, then there will be clarity on what we need to do. I think, and this is a general comment, maybe too general for this audience, but the general comment is that in terms of structural specifications, I think we've achieved pretty much, we are at par with international standards, whether it is bridge design, whether it is road pavement design, and I think even execution levels, our projects are being executed at fairly good quality. But where I think the specifications fall significantly short is on the finishing items, on the safety items, on the drainage and protective works, on aesthetics also. I think given the large volume that we are looking to build over the next few years, even at a slightly higher cost, it may be advisable to upgrade these specifications, as some of the ideas Mr. Kishore said, wider shoulders, more plantation, etc. And again, repetition, the DPRs across different consultants, across different projects are all unique. They have their own interpretation, especially on the finishing items. And this causes a lot of confusion for implementation. Again, normally we would argue for the maximum flexibility to be given to the developers and the designers on an ongoing basis. But I would maybe counterintuitively say here that given the large volume that we are trying to execute over the next few years, it may be more efficient to be more prescriptive, saying this is exactly what you need to do for some of these finishing items. Therefore, there is not, no time wasted in sort of reinventing the wheel at every single project. I think one of the key lessons we have learned is the bidding process itself. We are bidding on so many projects, so many, all parallelly. We're woefully underprepared for this. Part of it is by the process itself. From the date of the bid document, we get about 45 days to put in a bid. In the last minute, there will be an extension of 2 weeks or 3 weeks if we really asked for it. All the developers together ask for it, there will be an extension. But again, at that stage, it isn't enough to give you a real, a planned process. I think the authority may really look at this and extend this to a 3 or a 4 month process. Maybe an initial delay of 1-2 months may happen, but then the cycle will continue from there, where the DPR consultant who has prepared the DPR is available. There are maybe a series of meetings, not just one pre-bid meeting, but 2 or 3 sort of consequent meetings, where the DPR consultant presents what the original intent was, and the developers are free to ask any questions, any changes. Similarly, the responses also today are very superficial. The idea is there's always a fear of contractual implications on a later date. I think if that can be separated at this stage, where it's purely technical and there's clarity on what is required, that will be helpful. Bid documents, again Mr. Kishore touched upon this. Schedule B and Schedule C define the scope of what is to be built. Schedule D talks about the standards and specifications. The problem is there are differences in the way it is written, there are a lot of discrepancies, and both sides try to play it to their advantage. And as a developer, I'll try to look at whatever is the best in terms of minimizing cost, etc. The authority says, I'll take the worst or I'll take the most conservative design between the two or the most conservative. But in the process, a significant time is wasted in finalizing the design and getting started with construction works. And continuing disputes on change of scope, variations in price, etc. Similar issues on the utilities, and this is a generic, I'm using utilities as a generic word. There may be various authorities, whether it is the local irrigation department, whether it is railways in some cases. But basically not enough work is being done before the bid in identifying and liaising with the utilities companies and identifying what is the work to be done as part of the project. Once we enter the project, at that point, we then get into an iterative process where the respective agency wants the best of facilities. NHI says, we are only relocating utilities, we are not upgrading your facilities. And there's a big debate on who's to pay for how much of that. A lot of this, if it can be pre-done at the time of the DPR itself, there can be a lot of finalization of the price. There's clarity on what is to be done, and we can easily price that in. I think as a general concept, this is where we are suffering the most. The pre-construction phase, or before we start construction, is being completely neglected by most developers, including myself. We are in a rush to start work. We don't spend enough time doing the planning and the preparatory design. So we submit piecemeal design, we get started with work, and there is no clarity on what is to be done. I think if this phase, the development phase, if it can be better utilized by the developers, where we submit comprehensive designs, those designs are appropriately reviewed and approved by the various agencies, including the consultant as well as the authority, if whatever approvals are required. And there is clarity, if any discussions on scope, etc. have to happen, it happens then. You freeze the cost of the project, so even for lenders and investors, there is clarity on what is the final cost of the project going to be. Of course, there may be variations in special cases, but they should be really special cases, not by default. So in that case, then there is full clarity on what is to be built, and then we can get into the construction phase, where we don't have to keep reinventing all this again and again, and for a year and a half or 2 years, whatever that cycle is, only thing that's required, as Mr. Kishore said earlier, is I get all the resources and I execute. There is no confusion what is to be built, there is no further discussions. There may be special cases, again I repeat, on a one-off basis, but they should be handled as a one-off case. But where we suffer is, instead of doing this upfront, we are constantly short-circuiting the initial planning phase, jumping directly into construction, submitting piecemeal design without any overall clarity, and that's, I think, biting us in the long run. And I will end with a quick comment on contract management. See, the size of the projects, the number of people involved, there are investors, lenders, number of lenders involved. It's just so much more complex now that the way we are allowing things to drift in a contract just cannot sustain. A simple variation of scope, extension of time, it takes months and sometimes years to be approved. Consultant takes their time, the authority takes their time, and till that is done, there is no clarity as to what the project is and what is happening to the project. So lenders are governed by RBI auditors, and they keep saying this account has become NPA, etc., because there is no clarity on the documentation. So I think we have to change our methodology slightly, rather than sort of, more of a laissez-faire kind of approach where the things drift. We have to be very rigid in terms, on both sides. I fully accept, as developers, we also sort of fail in our duties to be timely. But I think both sides need to be very disciplined so that there is clarity on the project, especially, I repeat, given the large volume that the industry is looking to build in the next 3-4 years. That's it. Thank you.